Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about some of the important concepts in culture and art, more specifically in literature. Some of them are the Spanish literature in the Golden Age and its impact, its relation with Miguel de Cervantes and his work Don Quixote de la Mancha. We're also going to talk about one of the most important figures in this area, Felipe Lobe de Vega y Carpio, and last but not least, we're we're going to explain the stylistic movement called Congorism in Spanish history. But what was the Spanish Golden Age? Well, the Golden Age is often seen as the high point of Spanish literature. Many of the works that emerged from this period were religious, realistic, and patriotic. It started in the 1492 and ended in the 1681. It began when the conquest of Granada in 1492 ended the Reconquista and allowed Spain to focus on other endeavors.
Art and architecture were key features of this period. Art was heavily influenced by the Counter Reformation. So works heavily featured religious themes and mysticism. One major style was Mannerism, where features were exaggerated, often creating asymmetrical paintings. Architects of this age are highly renowned, and their buildings, such as El Escorial and the Granada Cathedral, are still admired today. Famous and influential artists of the era were El Greco, Diego Velázquez, Francisco de Zurbarán, and Bartolomé Esteban Murillo.
Theater blossomed in this age, revealing the Elizabethan and Jacobean dramatists of the English Renaissance. In Spain, three main styles evolved and took center stage: the comedy, the auto sacramental, a short allegorical religious play performed in verse, and the entreme, a short piece performed during intervals of full theater performances. Some of the most famous plays in this period include Life is a Dream, Calderón de la Barca, a philosophical drama, Fuente Ovejuna, Lope de Vega, a historical play, The Trickster of Seville, Tirso de Molina.
There was a high amount of disparity between the different classes. Increased trade benefited merchants, ship owners, and industrialists, but not the poor, who still suffered from plagues, inflation, and famines. The cultural developments were of interest to Philip II and some of the higher classes, but had little effect on the poor. It was a monumental era because new forms of literature began to rise, one being the picaresque novel. They're basically about low-life ruffians who kind of go from master to master doing odd jobs in society. These were new mainly because they dealt with the lower classes. Unlike other novels, they weren't just about the elites and the knights and noble people. It's known as the era that marked the start of the modern novel.
The most important figure to emerge from the 17th century was Miguel de Cervantes, widely hailed as the author of the first modern novel, The Ingenious Gentleman Don Quixote of La Mancha. It was published in two parts, the first part in 1605 and the second part in 1615. Cervantes always long excelled as a poet and playwright. Instead, he gained immortal fame for his prose. In his famous work, Cervantes embarked on a social satire and exploration of human nature in his tale of books of chivalry, where he demonstrates his mastery of dialogue in the conversation between Don Quixote and Sancho.
Don Quixote tells the story of a Spanish noble who goes in search of his own chivalrous adventures, inspired by his love of reading. It was basically a satirical treatment of anachronistic chivalric ideals, combined pastoral, picaresque, and romantic elements in its narrative, and remains the single most important literary work produced during the Golden Age. Don Quixote was actually the second most translated book in the world apart from the Bible. The Golden Age of Spain ended in the late 17th century as Spain entered a new era and its power and prosperity began to decline. Now that we got deeper into this concept and have a clear and developed idea about what was the Spanish Golden Age and its importance, we're gonna introduce you to Felix Lope de Vega. First of all, who is he and why is he relevant?
Well, Lope de Vega, due to his astonishing literature output, was a Spanish poet, playwright, novelist, and one of the key figures in the Spanish Golden Age of Baroque literature. Alongside Luis de Góngora, Francisco de Quevedo, Miguel de Cervantes, and others, with whom Lope had his most significant literature field. Lope de Vega also has the distinction of being Spanish most prolific playwright. He was one of the most important writers in the history of Spanish literature. He was born on November 25 in 1562, Madrid. He also wrote more than 1,000 works, lived to the age of 73, and took part in a memorable quarrel with Miguel de Cervantes. Because of the insight, deep, and easy of his plays, he is regarded as one of the greatest dramatists in Western literature. His plays still being produced worldwide. Although not well known in the English speaking world, his plays were present in England as early as the 1660s, when diarist Samuel Pepys record having attempted some adaptations and translations of them, although he omits the mention of the author. 3,000 sonnets, 3 novels, 4 novellas, 9 epic poems, and about 500 plays are attributed to him. Although he has been criticized for putting quantity ahead of quality, nevertheless, at least 80 of his plays are considered masterpieces. He was a friend of the writer Francisco de Quevedo and an arch-enemy of the dramatist Juan Ruiz de Alarcón. The volume of his life work made him admired by not only contemporary authors, such as Cervantes and Luis de Góngora, but also by many others. For instance, Johann Wolfgang Góngora once wished he had been able to produce such a vast and colorful opera. He died in August 27 in 1635.
Finally, I'm going to tell you about the Congorism. Congorism, or best known as culteranismo, is literally a style that was born in Spanish territory at the end of the 16th century and had an impact until the 17th century. It is framed within a Baroque period, and its name is due to the use of cultism, that is, cult terms. In all the narrative, it is movement that was very important in the world of literature. Many writers sought to intensify each of the expression and condense the meaning and use as many cult themes as possible. Culterasnis is named Congorism thanks to the poet Luis de Góngora, who was one of the main writers who founded this style. A very similar literary idea also developed in other countries. In Italy, it was known as Marinismo, in France as Preciosismo, and in Great Britain as Euphismo. Some of the characteristics of these styles are epithelic adjectives that refer to the scents are used, especially when talking about color. For example, instead of colored red, they refer to scarlet. The color blue was changed to the cerulean, and etc. Syntactic Latinisms such as hyperbaton are used at times when it's not necessary. That is the natural orders of the phrases.
In Spanish, it's reversed to give it more culture and sophisticated appearance. They use many daring metaphors that had never been seen before, and word games are used constantly.